For example, the Dogon people, a remote West African tribe located 300 kilometers south of the Republic of Mali, appear to possess an in-depth knowledge about space, our solar system, and even the distant Sirius star system, thousands of years before modern science did. While the San Bushman tribe located in South Africa are believed to have found means to access parallel realities, even though these two examples have since been incorporated into the ancient astronauts narrative. What we have here are examples of Aboriginal people utilizing fringe knowledge to achieve extraordinary goals without the assistance of aliens. Two, 9, 9, 9, 7, 9, 2, 4, 5, 8. This figure is the numerical representation of the speed of light. According to special relativity, this rate is the maximum speed at which all energy, matter, and information in the universe can travel. This number is also the coordinates for the Great Pyramid of Giza. Furthermore, together with its sister pyramids, Khafra and Menkaura, the three structures almost perfectly aligned with the distant constellation Orion's belt, suggesting that the ancient Egyptians were either incredibly intelligent or could simply be more than human because of their amazing technological achievements. Many people from outside of the country have tried to stake a claim and ownership on them. So in this episode, as a native Egyptian, we'll look into the theories and origins of my people and ask the question: were our ancients primarily Black African, White Caucasian, or even Grey aliens? This is Egypt today, a fun-loving people with a mixture of Arab, North African, Mediterranean, and Sub-Saharan lineage, a modern-day melting pot that comes under the title of Egyptian culture. In the 21st century, Egypt is arguably one of the most ethnically diverse and influential cultures in the Middle East, impacting the entire MENA region's language, music, film, and art. But what about the influence of our forefathers, the ancient Egyptians? Most of the modern-day discussion surrounding ancient Egypt's origins seem to have begun as a result of Europe's push into North Africa and the Middle East over the past 300 years. So in order for us to cover as much as we can in a short space of time, this episode will be summarized into 4 parts that will tackle some elements of the Afrocentric perspective, the Eurocentric perspective, and by extension, the ancient Egyptian aliens perspective, and finally, the Middle Eastern perspective. All viewpoints are timestamped into different chapters in the pinned comment and description box below. From the 1920s onwards, several obscure Black scholars in America began to challenge what they called the de-Africanizing of Egyptian historiography. They argued that in Western academia, ancient Egyptian history was being turned into an extension of European history, almost completely separating it from the histories of Africa and the Middle East. In 1955, Sheikh Anta Diop, a Senegalese physicist who also had an active interest in history, linguistics, and anthropology, became one of the most famous proponents of this Afrocentric perspective, stating that there was a deliberate attempt to whitewash Egyptian history. Advocates of his idea rely heavily on the writings from the classical Greek historians, the most famous being Herodotus from the 5th century BC, who compared the ancient Egyptians to the Ethiopians, apparently due to their black skin and woolly hair. Diop's viewpoints have seemingly been validated by numerous archaeological and anthropological studies done in East Africa over the past 50 years. For example, in 1987, Martin Bernal from Cornell University, using linguistic, archaeological, and mythological findings, argued that while the exact racial composition of ancient Egypt cannot be known, Egyptian civilization was still fundamentally African, meaning that he believed that it had more in common with sub-Saharan African culture than it had with the Southern European and the Mediterranean. Now, while Bernal's conclusions are somewhat subjective, the strongest evidence in the 21st century supporting the idea that ancient Egypt could have primarily been a black African kingdom can be found in Egypt's modern-day Nubian community, despite going through a process of Arabization. According to Britannica, the black Nubians of Egypt and Sudan today also still speak an Egyptian language that was spoken by the ancient Egyptians. This language exists as part of the Nilo-Saharan language family, which has been documented and attested by the ancient Greeks and Italians for thousands of years. History also confirms that the land of Nubia was actually home to several empires, most prominently the Kingdom of Kush, which conquered Egypt in the 8th century BC and ruled the country as its 25th dynasty. But is this enough to prove that ancient Egypt's history prior to the 25th was primarily a black civilization? There were more than 30 dynasties, with the pyramids estimated to have been built way back in the 4th. Consequently, those adhering to the Eurocentric viewpoint argue no, it was not a black civilization. According to the Eurocentrics, all of Egypt's greatest achievement took place way before the Nubian reign. And because of this, they critically question how much of an influence, if any at all, did black Egyptians have before this time. This criticism also takes aim at the work the ancient Greek historian Herodotus has written. Some academics say that he was not qualified enough to discuss ancient Egyptian civilization, since his analysis often came across as weak, superficial, and flawed. Eurocentrics also accuse Afrocentrists of mistranslating Herodotus' work by stating that the key word he uses in the original Greek that refers to the black complexion is wrong. They say that within this context, the word that he uses, melanchrois, does not actually mean black in the sense of belonging to the black race, because if he was referring to skin tone, he would have used the word Aethiops, which has an etymology meaning burnt, referring to the color of the Nubian and sub-Saharan people. Even though this is a somewhat questionable argument, a stronger and more obvious case they make is that the ancient Egyptians, in much of their art, generally tended to portray themselves as not having black skin, but brown. They note that even though black-skinned Egyptians are also portrayed in the record, it's no way near to the extent of those with brown skin. While the skin tones in Egypt's art is a logical observation, it's also spoiled by an undercurrent of bigotry that seems to have less to do with the history of ancient Egypt, and more to do with Europe's imperialistic push into North Africa and the Middle East in the 19th and early 20th century. According to Zachary Morgan from Western Carolina University, the Eurocentrics taking claim of ancient Egypt's history went beyond simply discrediting the idea of a black ancient Egyptian theory, but also justified Europe's claim for establishing colonies throughout North Africa and the Middle East, since they believed they were reclaiming from Arab lands what was essentially European history. Morgan states that this imperialistic view led to European nations competing with each other to establish a monopoly on the recovery of ancient Egyptian artifacts, as they deemed modern Egyptians as not being capable of managing their own history. Meanwhile, American Egyptology of this period was characterized by a desire to utilize Egypt as a forerunner to the American civilization. Here, monuments were modeled on and inspired by ancient Egypt. It is here in America's early history where we can find the first references to the ancient aliens' perspective. Otherwise known as the Paleocontact theory, This theory that has been popularized on television shows such as the History Channel and in blockbuster movies like Prometheus and Marvel's Eternals plays with the idea that aliens came to Earth tens of thousands of years ago, where they either created humans or enslaved us when they arrived. It's from them ancient man learned or were genetically engineered into developing advanced sciences that are on par with the modern day or even surpassed it. Hence, why across the Middle East from Egypt to Iran, spectacular examples of early human development can be found. Examples of these come in the form of huge megalithic structures built here, and is often associated with the Anunnaki, an ancient Sumerian deities who may be alien in origin, and another species called the Pleiadians, who are believed to have originated from the Pleiadian star cluster. Concerning the Anunnaki, how much of the theories surrounding them are true, and how much is fantasy, has already been discussed in earlier videos, and will be examined in more detail in future episodes inshallah. As for the Pleiadians, these anomalous beings are at the core of this entire controversy surrounding race, the Paleocontic theory, and the Eurocentric perspective. While we genuinely believe that countless amount of strange anomalous sightings and events that happen globally could be partially alien in origin, is it fair to conclude that aliens are also the creators of humanity and all that we have achieved, since being on Earth is because of them? Well, it's one of many theories to consider, but the French paleontologist Julien Benoit implies that this theory in particular is only an extension of the Eurocentric theory, as it displaces the achievements made by ancient Middle Easterners, Africans, and even the Mexican Aztecs in place of aliens. Benoit is concerned that people are too ready to dismiss the achievement of ancient brown and black people in favor of aliens. Even Nick Pope, a former UK Ministry of Defense official who actively investigates and chronicles real-life UFO phenomena, state that even though aliens most definitely exist, the ancient theory in particular is somewhat problematic and borderline R-word. The Pleiadian alien idea in particular has been accused by critics as merely being a variation of the ideas a certain German leader from the 1940s was striving for. These ancient extraterrestrials who come from the Pleiadian star system typically resemble Nordic Scandinavians. They're commonly described as looking like the quote-unquote ideal human. They are normally between 6 to 7 feet tall, have long blonde hair, blue eyes, and they are one of the true creators of the ancient world. But why is this problematic when it comes to ancient Egypt and archaeological work done across the region? Unfortunately, this Pleiadian alien theory also appears to be a variation of the lost race of the mound builders theory, a theory that plays directly into the 19th century imperialism. On the 6th of December 1830, US President Andrew Jackson used his second State of the Union address to defend the Indian Removal Act, an act that displaced the Native American population. Here, he stated in the monuments and fortresses of an unknown people spread over the extensive regions of the West, we behold the memorials of a once powerful race which was exterminated or has disappeared to make room for the existing savage tribes. These words have been interpreted as one of the earliest official references to a race of ancient advanced beings who were indigenous to the Americas. These were said to be the lost race of the Mound Builders, a race who were theorized to be Nordic-like superhumans, similar in description to the Pleiadians, who were then wiped out by the Native Americans. To put it simply, critics say that the ancient alien theory is just the updated version of the lost race of the Mound Builders folklore, but now applied to Africa and the Middle East. On a side note, this is not to say that Africa does not have a homegrown folklore and tradition of fringe science that predates the modern Paleocontic theory. For example, the Dogon people, a remote West African tribe located 300 kilometers south of the Republic of Mali, appear to possess an in-depth knowledge about space, our solar system, and even the distant Sirius star system. thousands of years before modern science did, while the San Bushman tribe located in South Africa are believed to have found means to access parallel realities. Even though these two examples have since been incorporated into the ancient astronauts narrative, what we have here are examples of Aboriginal people utilizing fringe knowledge to achieve extraordinary goals without the assistance of aliens. This finally leads us back to our main topic, race and the ancient Egyptians. In 2017, German scientists published a paper of a DNA analysis that proved that ancient Egyptians have a genetic affinity with the people of Turkey, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. In other words, the Levant. People today who have skin tones that are generally very light brown and too tanned. Even without DNA studies, evidence of this can be found in ancient Egyptian art, as mentioned earlier on in this episode. Here, they portrayed themselves in a variety of skin colors, but for the most part, they drew themselves in a tanned brownish color. Black and even white skin tones are also represented in these records, but not to the degree as those who are tanned, suggesting that the majority of ancient Egyptians were light brown, with a minority who were white-skinned and black-skinned, much like the demographics of modern-day Egyptians today, but for obviously different reasons. In the 21st century, due to the spread of Islam throughout the Mediterranean region, the subsequent intermixing that has happened and continues to happen between the Arab, Turkish, North and Sub-Saharan Muslim people has resulted in a variety of skin complexions and phenotypes across the country. Therefore, the communities who initially interacted less with the Islamic Arab and Turkish settlers back in the day have a stronger genetic link to the ancient Egyptians. Therefore, in addition to the modern-day Nubians, you'll also find that the Coptic Christian communities of Egypt also have genetics that can also be linked directly back to ancient Egypt. Consequently, their DNA is also closer to that of the neighboring Libyan and Levantine people, which according to a 2015 study done by Hassan Hisham and Layuni Hafid, is also devoid of Southern European genetics. All of this suggests that both Afrocentric and Eurocentric perspectives are flawed, but with the elements of truth, even with the idea that alien beings could have had a hand in human development, is technically still a theoretical possibility to consider, since we've chronicled way more stranger things on this channel. But to what degree extraterrestrials had any involvement, if any at all, is still yet to be understood. In conclusion, it can be argued that the concept of an ancient alien race having a direct hand in our human development may only be a popular smokescreen to distract us from a far more horrifying theory. If ancient man, or a civilization thousands of years older than the Egyptian civilization, had naturally reached a technological level close to where we are today, suddenly disappeared, then what happened? It would have had to be a catastrophic event so large that it completely reset our advancement. Ancient texts from many of the world religions with extremely different viewpoints speak of a flood destroying the world, but other disasters, such as a sudden pole shift to even ancient nuclear war, has also been suggested. And if it happened once, it could happen again and again. In the next episode, we'll look at a component of one such ancient technology that not only has the theoretical potential to end our modern world, but it also heavily based in the darkest magic of the occult, the Red Mercury anomaly, and why between 1948 and 1988, government of the world were actively seeking it out. So, what's your opinion? Who were or what were the ancient Egyptians? Yes, I agree that this is a very sensitive topic, even for me as an Egyptian to cover, but hopefully we addressed it in a balanced manner. If not, let us know and state your opinion. Just try to keep it all friendly and civil. Until the next time, thumbs up, share, and subscribe.